I am a powerful warrior.
Prove it.
All right, I've survived mustard gas and pepper spray.
Ooh, you sound like a seasoned veteran.
The Fool's Journey. Now that the Fool has discovered the power of love, just like in the pop song, he continues along his path. Soon he reaches the edge of a rather splendid-looking city. He stares in wonder at the towers and structures and is almost run over by a chariot.
Hey, careful! I almost ran you over with my chariot. I've only just had it greased. What are you, some kind of fool? Not to worry, it looks like you've survived. Well, come on then, get up and dust yourself off, old chap.
Right, yeah. Who are you?
I am victory in all its aspects. I am the triumph of the human spirit. I overcome 10 obstacles every day before breakfast. I laugh in the face of danger and pass water into the shoes of peril. I am the world's greatest champion.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
It is, but I certainly didn't get here by sitting on my ignoble behind, I can promise you that. I got here through the sheer strength of my convictions. These are my sphinxes, and they know all about my greatness.
We should do. He never shuts up about it.
So how can I become like you?
To achieve greatness, one must vanquish all of one's foes.
You mean the old woman at the grocery store who keeps giving me funny looks?
No, I mean the enemies of self-doubt, hopelessness, and insecurity. You need to conquer your mind to get where I am. And do you know what else you need?
An overinflated sense of self-importance?
An iron will, a belief in yourself that cannot be shaken by anyone. Now go forth into the world and grab it by the dangly bits. Really show it who's boss. Come, sphinxes, let us be victorious once more.
Oh, great. Here we go again.
With a triumphant spring in his step, the Fool returns to his journey. To be continued.
Welcome back to Kippy's Quest and Tarot School. This week we're talking about the superhero of the major arcana, the Chariot. In Waite's Key to the Tarot, his brief description reads as succor, succour. What does that word even mean? Anyway, that word, providence, also war, triumph, presumption, vengeance, and trouble. Earlier cards depict a similar scene of a charioteer, but with one important difference. The chariot was always shown drawn by horses. The image is thought to be derived from Plato's Phaedrus, a dialogue dating all the way back to 370 BCE. Plato used driving the chariot as an allegory for the human soul, describing the two horses as opposite in breed and character, going on to say, in our case, the driving is necessarily difficult and troublesome. The idea is that one of the horses represents our rational and intellectual aspects, while the other symbolizes our passionate and instinctive nature. Therefore, as we ride on the path to spiritual enlightenment, we need to employ a great deal of mental control in order to prevent our horses from pulling in completely different directions. Probably the most notable difference in the Rider-Waite version is the change from horses to sphinxes. Waite credits Eliphas Levi for this development.
What have elephants got to do with it? A brief history of Eliphas Levi.
Eliphas Levi was a 19th century French writer and occultist who was instrumental in starting the French occult revival of the late 1800s. He produced many works on ritual magic, the Kabbalah, and Hermeticism. Levi was responsible for connecting the 22 cards of the major arcana to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and by extension the 22 paths on the Kabbalistic tree of life. This was laid out in the 2 volumes that make up Levi's Transcendental Magic, which was translated into English by Arthur Edward Waite in 1896. As such, the work of Eliphas Levi was hugely influential in the creation of the Rider-Waite Tarot. The inclusion of the sphinxes takes us back to the Greek legend of Oedipus.
Isn't that the fella who diddled his mum?
Well, technically yes, but that's a different part of the story. He wasn't raised by his biological parents, so he didn't actually know she was his mother. Anyway, let's not get too far into that, as it does get rather tragic. I don't want to put a downer on a video that's supposed to be about victory and triumph. The part of the legend we're talking about concerns the ancient Egyptian city of Thebes, which was plagued by a sphinx who would pose a riddle to anyone trying to enter. If they answered incorrectly, the sphinx would gobble them up. The riddle went something like this.
What walks on 4 legs at dawn, 2 at midday, and 3 at dusk?
A crab.
Ha ha! Wrong, dickhead! Nom nom nom.
Luckily for Oedipus, he knew the answer.
The answer is man. As an infant he crawls on all 4s, as an adult he walks on 2 legs, and in old age he uses a walking stick.
Oh, well done, smart ass. Go on then, in you go.
Getting the correct answer meant that Oedipus became the king of Thebes. This is clearly what Waite was referring to when he wrote, "He's conquest on all planes, in the mind, in science, in progress, in all trials of initiation. He has thus replied to the Sphinx, and it is for this reason that I have accepted the variation of Eliphas Levi. 2 sphinxes thus draw his chariot." However, it's important to note the black and white colouring of the sphinxes and that they face in different directions. This shows us that the Rider-Waite version retains the idea of being pulled by opposing forces. Likewise, we see the same concept in the pillars of the High Priestess and the Kabbalistic Tree of Life.
I got an email this morning. Prince of Nigeria again? No, it was from an Egyptian pharaoh. Oh, sounds like a pyramid scheme.
The Charioteer's armour is adorned with a veritable plethora of ritual magic symbols and planetary signs, but perhaps none more so notable than his choice in shoulder pads. Here we find the Urim and Thummim from the breastplate of the High Priest of Jerusalem, as mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. According to the book of Samuel, these were used in a practice called cleromancy, or the casting of lots. The idea was that the word of the Lord could be determined through a seemingly random act, like rolling dice. A bit like shuffling a tarot deck, where we're consulting the laws of chaos for guidance. On his head, he wears an 8-pointed star. The octagram has its importance in pretty much all belief systems. Its meanings range from symbolizing the goddess Ishtar for the Babylonians to representing renewal and salvation in Judeo-Christianity. The modern symbol for chaos magic is thought to be derived from the 8-pointed star. And while we're on the subject of stars, he's got a canopy of them above his head, 6-pointed this time and representing divinity. The Charioteer stands beneath the heavens. On the front of the chariot, we can see a gavel or mallet. This is an important symbol in Freemasonry, which is where the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn originated. A massively important but not immediately obvious element of the card is that the chariot itself seems to be a block of stone. Paul Foster Case says its body is a cube, carrying out the symbolism of the cubes whereon the High Priestess and the Emperor sit.
But what does it all mean?
The appearance of the chariot is universally associated with victory, triumph, and overcoming obstacles. It suggests being in control of a difficult situation and managing to stay on top of it. It connects to the Magician card in terms of the aspect of willpower, and it's no coincidence that they're both carrying a wand. The chariot can serve as a reminder of our strength of will and can be a message that we have the power within us to overcome self-sabotage and challenge our limiting beliefs.
Now is the time to ride the chariot on our adventures to achieve our goals.
Why are you shouting?
When the chariot appears upside down, that can mean a failure of the willpower that we were just talking about. If we look closely at the card, we can see that the Charioteer is part of the stone block that forms the chariot, almost like he's set in concrete. This could apply to us being literally too set in our ways. Rachel Pollack suggests that relying solely on willpower can make a person rigid in the way they approach things, going on to say, unless the person can find some other approach to the difficulties, he or she faces disaster. Willpower alone cannot always sustain us. This reminds me of the third Delphic maxim, surety brings ruin. We can also see a contrast to the final card in the major arcana, the World. Here the dancing figure moves freely, without constriction.
Correspondence Corner!
The chariot sits on the 18th path of the Tree of Life between Binah and Geberah. This is the path between understanding and severity. He corresponds to the Hebrew letter Chet, which means fence. His musical note is E flat. His corresponding herb is cyperus, and his zodiac sign is Cancer. The chariot brings us to the end of the first section of Tarot School. If we look at the Fool as being the witness to the cards, we can see that he can fit anywhere in the sequence. That's why he's numbered at 0. This means that the Fool can be observing 3 rows of 7 cards.
Can I? Yes!
Rachel Pollack describes this in 78 Degrees of Wisdom. The division into 3 allows us to see the major arcana as dealing with 3 distinct areas of experience. Briefly, we can call these consciousness, the outer concerns of life in society, subconscious, or the search inward to find out who we really are, and superconscious, the development of a spiritual awareness and a release of archetypal energy. So we can look at the first line as representing the journey from birth to adulthood, in what Pollack describes as the worldly sequence. This puts the chariot at the end of this line and the final card before we move on to the sequence of turning inward and the search for self-knowledge. We'll be starting that next time when we discuss the strength card. The big takeaway for the chariot is the concepts of victory, conquest, and triumph. For now, we'll leave you with Arthur Edward Waite's summary of the card numbered at 7 in the major arcana. He is above all things, triumph in the mind.
It's true, I am completely mental.
Thank you once again for dropping in to Kippy's quest. May the coming days bring you victory, courage, and the triumphant resolve to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.